Good morning. My name's Tom. I come to you from Northern Maine, the Rustic log cabin. Welcome to my woodshed this morning. Get yourself a cup of coffee. I was sitting out here this morning just kind of enjoying the sun. I brought out some of my ice fishing traps today so that I can check out my leaders and stuff like that. I've been fishing for some pretty rough fish, so I want to make sure I don't have any broken leaders or anything like that, or scarred leaders really from teeth. I've been fishing for those northern pike. But anyways, right in the middle of a series right now working on. This will be part 3 of that series on buying a cabin, building a cabin, all of that. As I've said in the last couple of videos, I am a retired builder for 35 years plus, building cabins, repairing cabins, jacking cabins, leveling cabins, all of that. So I kind of figured I'd put together, we'll see how it goes. I said that in the last video. We'll see if you guys are showing some interest in this, and if you are, then I will continue it on. The first one was buying a cabin. Second one, we talked about purchasing your land, all of that, what's a good time to look at it and all of that. So now let's get on with, I've bought my land, I found my land, and now we're getting ready to build a cabin. For me, it's a pretty simple thing now, because for one thing, the older you get, and plus living here in this state my whole life, my idea of a cabin and yours might be a little bit different. My idea of a cabin is small. I have a really small cabin, and I have what I consider to be a large cabin. Now, a lot of people would really disagree with that, my wife especially. The rustic log cabin is 15 feet wide and 18 feet deep. I consider that a large cabin. My Beaver Creek cabin is 8 feet wide and 12 feet long. So now you know why I consider the rustic log cabin such a large cabin. Well, mainly why I like a small cabin is most of the time when I'm here, at the cabins, it's 20 below, 25 below. The smaller the cabin, the easier it is to heat. Plain and simple. Doesn't get any more complicated than that. A couple of things goes into a small cabin is jacking and leveling is easier. Heating them is easier. Maintaining them is easier. The tax bill is lighter. Sometimes there's no tax bill at all because it's considered like the size of a shed. So that's all things to play in. That's kind of how I look at Beaver Creek. Beaver Creek is 8 feet by 12 feet. Simple, simple, simple to heat. I've got a comfortable bed in there for sleeping. I've got a comfortable place to eat. And I've got a very nice wood stove. So all of that makes that cabin for me perfect. Now in your world, you're probably going to want something a little bigger than that. At the rustic log cabin, I've got the 15 by 18, and then beside that, about 50 or 60 feet away, I built another small cabin, which is, I think it's 12 feet by 16 feet. It's either 14 by 16 or 12. I think it's 14. I think it's 14 by 16. And I built that for my daughter's family, so they've got a place to stay. So size is something you're going to have to come up with. And I'm doing this video today is size directly formulates with how much heat's going to take to heat your cabin. If you've got a fairly large cabin and you get there on Friday night, it will take the entire weekend to get that cabin warmed up to room temperature. Because you have to warm the walls, you have to warm the furniture, you have to warm up everything that's in that building before And you know, like in my cabin, the first day I'm warm. But the second day I'm really warm because the furniture is warmed up, the bed's warmed up, the walls are warmed up. All that plays into getting a cabin from 25 below zero up to 70 degrees. And on cabins that are 2 floors or these gambrel cabins, and I can say that because I've stayed in a lot of cabins over the winters. I've stayed in every size, shape you can imagine. Either a friend's cabin or a buddy's cabin or a rented cabin. We used to rent cabins on Moosehead Lake every single winter. Some of them were gambrel, like a barn. Some were fairly small, but most of them were 2-story cabins. And we were there for 4 days. And it wasn't until the 3rd day before the cabin started to get warmer. So keeping that in mind when you do build a cabin here in the state of Maine, if you intend on using it in the wintertime, size does matter as far as how warm you're going to be and fast. I can build a fire in my cabin and within 20 minutes the place is at least 50 degrees. Everything's still warming up, but at least around the wood stove it's toasty and it's comfortable. So you might want to keep that in mind when it comes to choosing the size of your cabin. This video's kind of gone a different route than what I was originally starting, so we'll tie up that in the next one. I intended this video to be about ground up. What are we gonna place this cabin on? So I'll stay on this topic here of heat, and then I will in the next video I will talk about foundation for the cabin. So it doesn't take much to get me off track, but I just thought I'd take you in on that. If you would be interested in donating to help support the message that this channel is putting out there, as far as bringing hunting and fishing to life for everyone, the great experience of the great outdoors, check me out on the Patreon link above my head. And for $5 a month, you can be a big supporter of this channel. And I thank you ahead of time, and I will see you in the video. And the same thing, you know, the bigger the cabin, the bigger the wood pile. Or if you're going to heat with propane, the higher the propane bill. You know, all that plays into an account when it comes to owning a cabin. My life, owning the cabin, I try to keep the cost down as much as I can. Because it's for me, every dime matters as far as what it costs me to stay there. If I'm going up there for a month of fishing, I don't want it to cost me $1 million to be able to stay there. Nor do I want it to cost me a couple of cord of firewood to stay there, because I heat primarily with firewood. Both cabins have a propane backup, and the reason that they have a propane backup is in case something happens to me. If I get injured out on the lake or out in the woods and get back to the cabin, I don't have to build a fire to stay warm and stay alive. That's why I put in a backup system in each one of them, is I have a propane heater mounted to the wall that will definitely keep the cabin warm enough until help can get there, or warm enough that I can take a couple of days off. Say I get injured, anything that just lays me up, or illness. I could, you know, if you're there for a month, which a lot of times I am, illness can lay you up for a couple of days. So if illness was to lay me up for a couple of days, I can fire up the propane heater and be comfortable. And if you're building a cabin, that's something I would think about. You know, in Northern Maine and most of the Maine, we're covered in wood, so having free heat for a cabin is a real good option. I don't spend money on any wood for either one of my cabins because it's free for the taking right there on the property. I cut it, I put it in the woodshed, and I'm good to go. But I do, like I said, I do keep a couple of tanks of propane on hand for the propane heater, that if I'm ever injured or down or whatever, I can fire that propane heater up and survive. You know, 25 below zero is something you definitely don't want to be playing with in an illness situation. my two cabins, the rustic log cabin, just to give you an idea of what it takes to heat a 15 by 18 log cabin. At the most, I burn is 2 quart of firewood. At the most. And that's if I'm there a lot. I've got to be there most of the winter to be able to burn through 2 quart of firewood. Over at Beaver Creek, that takes even less. That place is 8 feet by 12 feet. And it's just a awesome place to eat. I think the Beaver Creek cabin, if I spent a lot of time there in the winter time, I would be pressed to burn 1 quart of firewood because it's such a small building. And I am going to insulate that building and probably put V-match pine on the inside of it just to make it that much tighter. And then I imagine, I imagine I could heat it for even less than that. So I think that's about all I want to say on firewood and small cabins and stuff like that. And I'll see you next week on this same topic.